Okay. Well, hello there. Third time's the charm. Yeah, this is the third time I'm doing this. Um, it is Saturday, June 29th, 11:11 in the evening. A little progress report to start off this video. I finished editing Wanderer and got the files updated, so it's ready to go in August when I will do the next edit. I always give a couple of months between edits so I can stop thinking about it. I also got back into first draft writing, worked a little bit on in Thine Own Image, the story of harmony and melody in Wesley, and also worked a little bit on an essence of dichotomy, quasi-sequel to Brianna and the Three. It actually concerns Brianna's brother, Sean. And it's been a kind of a rough week for me, very stressful time at work. And so I'm thinking what I may do going forward is not record the videos try and record them on Friday or Saturday nights, and I may just go back to doing them on Sundays so that I don't have to worry about recovering from stress and then stressing myself out recording a video. Excuse me. So I can do it on Sunday when I'm pretty much recovered. This week, I want to talk about the second book published, Campfire Stories. This was published back in 2013. It's a collection of 8 stories. It contains almost all the shorter stories that I had completed up to that point, with the exception of With Eyes Open and A Voice in the Darkness, which are in their own book titled With Eyes Open, and A God to Dance With, which is in A Bright Symmetry. With the exception of the final story in the collection, all the other stories in it had been submitted at various times over the years, and some of them multiple times over the years. 3 of them actually did see publication in online magazines. Signpost was published in 2005. All My Yesterdays Remembered was published in 2009. And Symmetry was published in 2010. It was the lack of success. It was the lack of success that led me to abandon traditional publishing and take on the life of an independent author and start self-publishing. The interesting thing about these stories is that they're arranged not in the order that I wrote them, but in the order that they exist in my fictional universe. All my stories take place in one timeline, stretching from 13.8 billion years plus 1 day, and we'll get into that in a second, in the past, to right now, the year 7869. There are characters that appear in some stories as quote-unquote guest characters, but later on will have their own stories, and other way around, there are characters who are main characters in their own stories in this, but end up being guest stars, if you will, in other stories. There are also my immortals and vampires and werewolves that have been alive for centuries, and they do tend to change their names, so it's quite possible that a character that you know under one name could also be the same character in another book under a different name. So, let's get into the stories. The first one is titled "The End of Seconds," and it's the one that takes place 13.8 billion years plus 1 day in the past. Now, in the aftermath of a failed time travel experiment, the universe prior to this one is destroyed. There's one survivor, an observer named Aricia Mastani. Now, she was the one who had been sent back to witness the birth of her universe, and one thing leads to another. Existing as a being of pure energy, Artemis releases the energy that destroyed her universe and giving rise to this one. This story, I always used to sum it up this way. It concerns the end of one universe, the start of the next, and answers the annoying question, so where did God come from? Because that was the one thing that always bothered me. I was raised Catholic, and even when I was a kid, it kind of nagged at me. Because if you go to the book of Genesis, first thing there, and God said, "Let there be light." So if God's creating all of existence, where did God come from? And at the time that I wrote this, I didn't really have any other plans for Aricia. I didn't think she was going to show up anywhere else. When I get to talking about a bright symmetry, we'll talk more about Aricia. The next story is called Games of Life and Cold. I'm not exactly sure when in history when in the timeline this takes place. On my notes here, it just says unknown year. It was originally going to be part of a series of stories about a race of genetically engineered beings known as the Sentinels, or Zentarna in their native language. It kind of fell apart. I kind of lost the story thread, lost less interest in the idea. I may resurrect parts of it. I know at least one character name has been I've resurrected for, and I'm using in an Essence and Dichotomy. There was a character in that original series of stories, a human character named Harper Salkind. She is now in an Essence of Dichotomy as Sean Crow's senior angel. Anyway, it basically, Games of Life and Cold, concerns this group of genetically engineered explorers exploring an uninhabited planet. And their exploration is interrupted by the arrival of an unknown starship from a race known as the Skadikians, a race that believes themselves to be superior to every other race. This is actually my only real foray into anything even vaguely resembling horror. It's I created vocabulary for them, and because I wanted to have their own language. The next story brings us up into the 21st century, titled If You Listen Softly. A writer wakes up to find an unknown woman in bed with him, and the problem is he has lived alone since his wife died. Further complicate things, he's the only one who doesn't know who she is. Everyone else who knows, his best friend knows, his family knows, everybody knows about this woman except him. I was trying for a kind of a Twilight Zone feel in this story, and I kind of like the way it turned out. It actually turned out very well. Um, some of the main characters' background is based a little bit on my own life, and as I grew up on Long Island. Next is All My Yesterdays Remembered, which is even more based on my life on growing up on Long Island. Author Tom Stengel welcomes his lifelong friend Lisa Stennis home for their 20-year high school reunion. And while she's there, she reveals to Tom and his wife Bonnie that she's immortal. You know, we like to think we know our friends, but everyone has secrets. And this one came about just from that sentiment. How well do you actually know the people in your life? You have friends you've known since childhood. You know, friends you think you know very well, but do you know them very well? What secrets are they keeping? What secrets are you keeping from them? Mm-hmm. Oh, and the story of Lisa Stennis is not finished. Stay tuned for Raven. Next is a story called Symmetry. And this is one of those stories, the other story that I wanted to try and invoke the feel of the Twilight Zone. Excuse me. Rosalind Hart wakes up to find herself in a subway car passing through an unnaturally dark and long tunnel. She has no idea how she got on a subway or who the train's conductor really is. Life-altering changes lead Rosalind to take the place of death. This is one of those stories that started with an image. I just had this image of her lying there on the floor of a train. Why a train, I don't know, but it did. And kind of got tossed around a little bit, trying to find a way to address what happens after death. You know, it's one of those things that you know, we all wonder about, and what happens. Who would have thought that the afterlife looks like a subway train? Next story is Signpost, and now we're really getting into now we are into the actual future. The prior stories all took place. The prior couple of stories all took place between 2005 and 2010. Now, Signpost, we are now in the actual future. Signpost takes place in 2114. On a survey mission to an uncharted, uninhabited world, the exploration cruiser Foxfire finds signs pointing to a legendary race known as the Mengarans. Their chief contact officer, Commander Tamara Bowron, discovers the fate of the Mengarans and hints at what might be the future of humanity. One of the problems that people have these days is you look up into the night sky, and you say to yourself, the universe is so big, the universe is so old. Why aren't there alien races knocking on our door every other day? Well, first of all, if you were an alien race, would you want to come here? I mean, just look at us. Do you want to have anything to do with us? I don't. Anyway. There are a couple of theories. One is that humanity is actually the first race the first species to evolve and reach intelligence. Don't get me started. And to reach some level of intelligence. somebody has to be first. Why not us? The second is that other races have evolved and they're out there. They just haven't made it here yet. I mean, could be that we're in some isolated portion of the galaxy. I mean, we are about two-thirds of the way out to the edge of the galaxy. So could be this is the suburbs, if you will, and not a lot of people come out here. Could be. Or the other theory is once life reaches our level of technology, they then destroy themselves. And well, so yeah. I'm sorry, my mind just went blank. My train of thought is Amtrak and it derailed, so bear with me a moment here. In my fictional universe, there are races older than humanity. There are some that are very old. There's the Ovestorian and the Vastalara, who used to be together in one race. And they were actually the first to evolve. One of the first to evolve. Another was the Mingarans. The Mingarans took a wildly different evolutionary path, and the story shows through a series of images going from using physical equipment to not using physical equipment to not using any kind of equipment, then eventually becoming energy beings. Basically, looking at what would a race that was the first to evolve after the Big Bang, given billions of years of evolution, what would they be like once they evolved beyond the need for physical bodies? And now we're moving up into the late 22nd century and the time of my EGS stories and Last Light. Now, Last Light is one of those stories that has a character that guest stars, that has her own story. Special Agent Carla Nadrasia becomes involved in a hostage crisis. Though she tries to end the standoff without injury, the hostage taker is killed and Agent Nadrasia is injured. This was originally supposed to be part of On a Cold Wind. But when I looked back at it, it really didn't fit in with the main story that I was trying to tell in On a Cold Wind. So I thought, okay, let me just pull it out. I'll use it on its own. It's not really the most original idea, and I accept that. You do your best. You do the best you can with what you've got, and. In this story, there's a character named Alexandra Sinclair, Special Agent Alexandra Sinclair, one of Carly's friends. Alexa, has her own, has her own novel. One has her own story. It's not a novel. It's novella. Wanderer, and Carly guest stars in that. So. That's what I mean when characters come and go through their own stories. Now, the last story in this collection is titled Shape of the Truth. And like Last Light, this was supposed to be part of a larger work. Unfortunately, that larger work I still have to get back to. But anyway. While visiting friends on Argosy Station, contract investigator Dari Locke is hired by Confed Security to track down a fugitive. A member of a race of shapeshifters known as the Children of Leja, Dari has to deal with prejudice and the knowledge that the fugitive is also a member of her race. The concept of shapeshifters has been around for a while. There are shapeshifters all throughout all throughout science fiction and fantasy. Some of the more better known ones, I believe, would probably be Odo from Deep Space Nine. If anybody out there besides me remembers the series, Maya from second season of Space 1999, one of the few good things about the second season of Space 1999, but we won't go there right now. A couple of things always bothered me about shapeshifters. So let's look at Odo for a second. Now, they do show his natural form as being a somewhat gelatinous form, which I feel a shapeshifter would actually be. My shapeshifters in their natural form look like globs of spheres of Vaseline, about a meter across, so a little over a yard across. And they did show his clothing as being part of him, because there are various times in the series where his clothes change automatically when he can do it at will. The thing that bothers me, though, is his comm badge. Actually, they're on this side on Bajorans, I believe. Is his comm badge. Now, could he have something appear on his exterior that simulated the appearance of a comm badge? Yeah. It can't work, though. How is he duplicating intricate electronics and a power source? Same thing with Maya from Space 1999. Her uniform is shown as changing with her, along with the comm lock, that thing hanging off their belts, which is a communicator door opener. It's cell phones before there were cell phones. So that kind of nagged me. And also, both of them are shown assuming forms radically smaller than their human forms. I mean, Maya, full-grown human woman in appearance, at one point turns into a caterpillar. That must be one heavy caterpillar. Taking the weight of a human adult, jamming it into the size of a caterpillar. No, not going to work. So what I did, I gave my shapeshifters, the children of Leja, I gave them restrictions. There's a shape only so big or so small that they can assume, and they really can't go much farther beyond that. It's just physically beyond them. They can duplicate most anything, the slightest physical contact, and they'll read your genetic structure, and then they can duplicate you. And when they do assume that human form, or whatever form they're mimicking, internally and externally, it's a perfect reproduction. If Dari, for example, doesn't have to worry about a deep scan, then she'll just have the exterior, and the interior will be her natural gelatinous self. Like I said, this was supposed to be part of a larger work that it didn't really fit in with, and so I pulled it out and left it on its own. And as for that longer work, I really should get back to that. Yeah, I really should. So there we are. This is a little bit of a longer video, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about Campfire Stories. I keep thinking that one of these days I'm just going to focus on writing another bunch of shorter stories and putting another collection together. But I don't know. I've got so many other things I have to finish first. So that's going to be about it for this week. Thank you all for watching, and I just want to mention, starting on July 1st and running through July 31st, all my books are going to be on sale on Smashwords only for half price. So unfortunately, it's just the ebooks. So if you prefer ebooks, then you can certainly get them over on Smashwords for half price. And you can find that link in down below, along with the links for all the other books. If you want to print on demand, it's you can get that through Amazon. And if you do buy one of the books, please go back and put up a review either on Amazon or Goodreads. Any of those places, it helps. Good, bad, or indifferent, it all helps. Also down below, you can see where I can be found on social media. I don't spend a lot of time on social media, particularly on Twitter and Tumblr, because they're really starting to annoy me. I'm really starting to not like the way they're drifting to the left, and Tumblr apparently thinks it knows what I should or shouldn't see. So anyway, so that's going to be it for now. Thank you for listening, and remember, we are each of us the heroes of our own stories and the villains of someone else's. See you next week, guys. Bye.